I recently made a final decision that my entire family considers the most ruthless betrayal in the world. My name is Jillian. I am 30 years old and I have spent my entire adult life quietly fixing financial disasters for my relatives without ever asking for gratitude. Despite carrying their heavy monetary burdens for many years, they never respected my sacrifices, but rather treated me like an inferior subordinate, expected to submit unconditionally to their ridiculous demands. Everything finally crossed the line of basic human decency when I received a formal email containing a list of 6 humiliating conditions I had to strictly follow just to earn an invitation to a major family wedding. They genuinely believed I would simply swallow my pride to maintain the perfect public image they desperately wanted to project to their wealthy guests. Instead of yielding to their toxic manipulation or crying over the blatant disrespect, I silently booked a flight to Hawaii for the exact day of the ceremony while leaving behind a single brief note to clarify my sudden absence. Sitting completely unbothered on a tropical beach thousands of miles away, I watched my phone screen continuously light up with exactly 59 missed calls within a single hour. I took a slow breath while looking at those frantic notifications because I knew the absolute financial chaos I orchestrated had finally struck the venue back home. Before I go any further into the details of this disaster, if this is your first time visiting the channel, please take a quick moment to hit subscribe and share your thoughts in the comments below, because I genuinely read every single message. 4 months before the wedding ceremony actually took place, Mom appeared at my front door holding a thick stack of unpaid invoices with completely bloodshot eyes. She came straight to me because my sister Rhonda, who is 32 years old, was officially preparing to marry her fiancé Blake. I was already raising my daughter Willow, who is 8 years old, entirely on my own while strictly managing my consulting business. Mom did not visit my house to ask how Willow was doing, but rather to dump another massive financial disaster directly into my lap. This was certainly not the first time I had to rescue them from their own reckless monetary decisions. I previously paid off enormous credit card debts for Mom while simultaneously covering the expensive apartment rent for Rhonda for several consecutive months. Since childhood, they constantly drilled the toxic mindset into my head that family must always sacrifice for each other regardless of the personal cost involved. They always expected me to fix their massive mistakes without ever offering genuine gratitude in return. Standing in my hallway, Mom began sobbing uncontrollably while begging me to fund the entire wedding celebration at a highly exclusive art glass hotel located in downtown Seattle. She desperately claimed that Blake came from a highly respected wealthy family, so our side needed to project an image of equal financial status to avoid severe embarrassment. "You absolutely have to pay for this venue because Rhonda will be utterly humiliated if his parents discover we cannot afford a proper reception," Mom pleaded while aggressively pushing the extravagant hotel brochures into my hands. I stared at the astronomical numbers printed on those glossy pages while deeply thinking about the exhausting years I spent building my savings from absolutely nothing. I worked relentlessly for over a decade to secure a stable future for my daughter, while my relatives squandered every paycheck they ever received. Despite feeling intense resentment toward their endless financial manipulation, I reluctantly agreed to cover the costs under one non-negotiable condition. I demanded absolute secrecy because I firmly refused to let Rhonda treat me like her personal bank account while pretending she achieved everything herself. To establish a solid protective barrier, I hired my lawyer, Oscar, to meticulously handle the complicated financial logistics on my behalf. Oscar officially signed all the vendor agreements along with the payment contracts with the Seattle hotel directly through his corporate firm. This strict legal arrangement perfectly concealed the true source of the funding while ensuring I retained ultimate control over every single dollar being spent. I instructed him to structure the paperwork carefully so that no one in my family could access the actual account details. Because Oscar managed the transactions completely behind closed doors, Rhonda remained entirely oblivious to the reality that my hard-earned money was funding her luxurious fantasy. Operating under the ridiculous delusion that Mom had somehow secured a massive bank loan, she proceeded to spend cash recklessly on premium upgrades, alongside wildly unnecessary extravagant services. Whenever I attended the mandatory wedding preparation meetings to quietly monitor the ballooning budget, she treated me with outright condescension. She practically paraded around the hotel lobby acting like royalty, while constantly expecting me to carry her heavy shopping bags. Her toxic behavior quickly escalated from simply dismissing my opinions to making deliberately cruel remarks regarding Willow. "You really should leave your kid at home during the formal events, because children like her simply ruin the sophisticated atmosphere we are trying to create." Rhonda sneered loudly during a catering tasting session. I swallowed the sharp anger rising in my throat while tightly gripping my coffee cup. I chose not to argue with her right then because I silently reminded myself that I held the absolute legal power to collapse her entire manufactured world. Exactly 2 weeks before the wedding ceremony, an email with a glaringly capitalized subject line appeared in my inbox. The subject read, "Critical rules for my wedding," which immediately signaled her usual dictatorial tone. I opened the message expecting another long list of tedious errands I needed to run for her bridal party. Instead, the message contained a rigid list of 6 mandatory conditions that I needed to fulfill simply to attend the reception. The very first demand immediately sent a wave of icy fury straight through my veins because it directly targeted my child. Rhonda explicitly forbade Willow from stepping foot inside the Seattle hotel under any circumstances whatsoever. She arrogantly wrote that bringing a child born completely out of wedlock would irreparably stain the sophisticated aesthetic she wanted to present. She even suggested I hire a cheap overnight babysitter because my daughter did not belong among respectable society guests. Reading those vicious words about my innocent daughter completely crossed the final boundary of my patience. The subsequent items on her list aggressively shifted toward blatant financial extortion, masquerading as sisterly requests. She boldly ordered me to pay the massive security deposit for her brand new luxury apartment, while simultaneously demanding a full year of prepaid homeowner association fees. Furthermore, she completely expected me to fund their entire premium honeymoon package to an exclusive tropical resort without asking any questions. She outlined the payment deadlines as if she were a debt collector, demanding money from a delinquent client. She genuinely assumed I would just blindly transfer thousands of dollars to support her lavish lifestyle, because I had always done exactly that in the past. The most incredibly degrading requirement appeared near the very bottom of the demanding message just above her electronic signature. Rhonda strictly commanded me to wear a plain gray uniform matching the hired catering staff, rather than an appropriate formal guest dress. She shamelessly admitted her specific goal was to trick Blake and his prestigious relatives into believing I was merely a temporary event worker. She wanted to actively erase my existence as her biological sibling, simply because she considered my single mother status a disgraceful burden to her shiny new high society image. She literally instructed me to use the service elevator to avoid mixing with the actual invited family members. "You need to stay completely out of sight in the background so you do not embarrass us in front of his important guests." Her email concluded with sickening entitlement. Staring at the glowing computer screen, every single ounce of familial obligation I ever felt completely shattered into dust. I finally understood that even if I completely drained my entire life savings to finance her fantasies, they would never view me as a human being worthy of basic respect. They only saw me as a convenient bank account mixed with a punching bag for their own deep insecurities. All those years of swallowing my pride to keep the peace suddenly felt utterly pointless. I did not shed a single tear over the devastating realization, nor did I pick up my phone to scream at Mom about the sheer cruelty of the situation. I refused to waste another drop of emotional energy arguing with people who fundamentally lacked basic empathy. I calmly moved my mouse across the screen while taking a slow breath of absolute clarity. I forwarded the entire disgusting message directly to Oscar, along with a very brief instruction attached to the top. The situation has finally crossed the line. Please prepare the termination documents immediately. I typed before closing my laptop with complete certainty. On that Monday morning, when I confidently walked into the corporate office, Oscar had already arranged the entire stack of contract files neatly across his desk. He immediately presented the formal legal documents required to completely cancel the massive credit card authorizations used to guarantee payments for the Seattle venue, alongside all associated catering vendors. The complicated paperwork explicitly outlined the immediate revocation of the financial trust we had previously established to shield my true identity from the hotel management team. We carefully reviewed every single contractual clause to ensure my sudden financial withdrawal complied perfectly with the original corporate agreements we securely established several months ago. Oscar looked at me with a noticeable expression of slight hesitation before delivering his final professional warning regarding the irreversible severity of my chosen retaliatory actions. After you officially sign this cancellation order, the hotel management possesses the absolute right to stop providing all scheduled services immediately without any further notice, he explained cautiously. I did not blink or show any visible sign of hesitation as I looked directly into his eyes to deliver my final uncompromising answer regarding the matter. I understand the consequences perfectly. Hand me the pen so we can finish this necessary procedure right now, I replied with a completely steady voice. I pressed the blue ink firmly onto the paper while explicitly instructing him to schedule the financial withdrawal to take effect exactly at dawn on the actual wedding day. Oscar rapidly typed the specific digital commands into his secure banking terminal to guarantee the transaction reversal would inevitably hit the hotel payment servers early Saturday morning. Setting the exact cancellation time for the morning of the ceremony guaranteed that Rhonda would possess absolutely zero opportunity to scramble for alternative bank loans or borrow emergency funds. She would be forcefully compelled to face the humiliating reality of her own financial ruin, directly in front of the wealthy guests she desperately wanted to impress. Later that same afternoon, I left the legal firm to meet my best friend Chloe at a quiet restaurant downtown to share the overwhelming burden of the toxic situation. I handed my unlocked smartphone across the wooden table so she could thoroughly read the degrading email containing those 6 ridiculous conditions directed at my innocent child. Chloe stared at the glowing digital screen with absolute disgust before fiercely validating my drastic decision to permanently sever financial ties with my highly abusive relatives. She forcefully reminded me that blood relations do not grant anyone a free pass to inflict psychological abuse or demand endless monetary sacrifices without facing any severe consequences. Her unwavering emotional support effectively washed away the tiny fraction of misplaced guilt lingering in my chest because she confirmed that I was simply protecting my daughter. While sitting there drinking my cold iced tea, I opened a premium travel application on my device to initiate the final irreversible phase of my silent exit strategy. I directly booked 2 expensive business class tickets, departing for a beautiful tropical resort in Hawaii on the exact same morning the Seattle ceremony was scheduled to begin. I truly wanted to ensure we were safely thousands of miles away across the ocean by the time the financial hurricane finally made destructive landfall at the venue. Once I safely returned to my quiet house later that evening, I pulled our largest suitcases from the hallway closet to begin the secret packing preparation process. I carefully folded colorful summer clothes for Willow, while quietly making sure everything remained completely hidden from anyone who might unexpectedly drop by the house unannounced. I meticulously organized our passports alongside the newly purchased boarding passes while feeling a profound sense of liberation, lifting the heavy weight off my tired shoulders. At exactly 7 o'clock on Friday evening, merely one day before the officially scheduled wedding ceremony, I confidently walked into the bridal suite of the Seattle Hotel holding a small decorative box in my hands. The massive hotel room felt incredibly chaotic, with expensive designer dresses scattered carelessly across the luxurious furniture, while Rhonda was intensely applying her premium makeup near the brightly illuminated window. She immediately looked at my approaching reflection through the large vanity mirror and instantly treated me like a lowly hired servant the very second I stepped inside the doorway. She did not bother offering a simple welcoming greeting or showing any basic human decency toward the siblings secretly funding her incredibly extravagant lifestyle. Instead of inviting me into the celebration, she aggressively pointed her expensive makeup brush toward the messy far corner of the crowded bridal suite. "Pick up those scattered shoes and stack them neatly in the corner. Do not just stand there staring like a completely useless person," Rhonda commanded with absolute arrogance. I successfully suppressed the overwhelming wave of deep contempt rising inside my chest while carefully maintaining a perfectly neutral facial expression under her piercing, judgmental gaze. "All right, I will do exactly what you asked right now," I replied calmly while slowly walking toward the massive pile of discarded designer footwear. While Rhonda proudly paraded her assumed authority in front of her highly impressionable, giggling bridesmaids, I deliberately maintained a perfectly submissive attitude without offering any verbal resistance whatsoever. I quietly organized the scattered high heels because I knew, with absolute certainty, that her fragile fabricated empire would completely shatter into pieces by tomorrow morning. She genuinely believed she held absolute, undeniable power over my daily existence, while remaining completely ignorant about the impending financial destruction waiting for her at dawn. Allowing her to deeply enjoy this final fleeting moment of manufactured superiority felt surprisingly satisfying, given the devastating reality she was inevitably about to face. I silently watched her order the remaining bridesmaids around with the exact same toxic entitlement she had continuously weaponized against me for my entire adult life. I patiently waited for the noisy bridal party members to cluster together around the large open wardrobe before executing the final critical step of my quiet departure strategy. Taking full advantage of the loud, chaotic distraction filling the spacious room, I carefully approached the elegant vanity table where her expensive cosmetics were haphazardly displayed across the pristine glass surface. I smoothly pulled a crisp white envelope from my heavy winter coat pocket and slid it directly underneath the heavy decorative floral vase sitting firmly in the center. The sealed envelope contained the single handwritten note explaining my deliberate physical absence alongside the permanent termination of my secret financial sponsorship for the entire event. A few minutes after I successfully concealed the hidden message, Rhonda abruptly turned around to issue another exhaustive series of demanding instructions regarding some forgotten items back at my house. She haughtily ordered me to drive all the way back across the busy town to retrieve several miscellaneous accessories she supposedly needed for the early morning bridal preparation schedule. I simply nodded my head in complete obedient agreement before turning around and walking straight out of the bridal suite without ever casting a single glance backward. The exact moment the heavy wooden door clicked firmly shut behind me, I permanently discarded the pathetic submissive facade I had forcefully worn for the past several torturous months. I walked briskly through the luxurious hotel lobby, holding my head incredibly high, before stepping directly into a waiting taxi that would safely transport my daughter and me straight to the international airport. At exactly 8 o'clock on Saturday morning, just as the long flight carrying Willow and me safely landed at the tropical airport in Hawaii, the massive financial hurricane back home officially began. The very second I disabled the airplane mode on my mobile device, a highly urgent voicemail notification from the Seattle Hotel event manager immediately popped onto my glowing screen. I pressed the audio speaker icon while walking alongside Willow through the busy arrival terminal to hear the incredibly panicked voice echoing from the tiny electronic speaker. Your primary guarantee card has been completely declined by the banking system. We desperately need a new payment method to continue," the frantic manager stated clearly. According to the subsequent frantic text messages rapidly flooding my inbox, the uncompromising hotel management team quickly approached the bridal party to deliver their final corporate ultimatum. They firmly stood in front of the bewildered relatives to officially announce their strict corporate protocol regarding the massive unpaid vendor balances accumulating for the event. "We require immediate payment in full, using secure cash, otherwise the entire wedding reception will be completely suspended from service," the venue coordinator announced to the crowd. The wealthy relatives standing near the grand entrance stared in absolute shock upon hearing that the luxurious celebration currently possessed zero financial backing whatsoever. Amidst the rapidly escalating tension occurring inside the venue lobby, Rhonda rushed back into the bridal suite to desperately search for any hidden emergency funds. She frantically tore open the crisp white envelope I had carefully placed underneath the decorative floral vase during the previous evening. She read the single handwritten note explaining my permanent financial withdrawal at the exact moment Blake and his prestigious relatives began aggressively questioning the embarrassing service delays. The wealthy groom demanded an immediate logical explanation regarding why the professional catering staff stubbornly refused to serve the expensive appetizers to the hungry arriving guests. Her hands physically trembled violently while holding the piece of paper that confirmed her absolute loss of control over my corporate bank accounts. Without the massive limit of my premium credit card silently shielding her financial incompetence, Rhonda completely failed to maintain her carefully fabricated wealthy facade in front of her furious future in-laws. She was ruthlessly exposed as a financially reckless individual, heavily drowning in massive consumer debt, rather than the sophisticated high society heiress she aggressively pretended to be. Blake stared at his weeping bride with absolute disbelief as he slowly realized the terrifying extent of her elaborate monetary deception over the past several years. His wealthy parents watched the humiliating spectacle unfold with intense visible disgust while discovering their son was about to marry someone harboring severe financial liabilities. The beautiful illusion she painstakingly constructed using my hard-earned money shattered instantly into thousands of irrecoverable pieces directly on the polished marble hotel floor. While I comfortably collected our heavy luggage from the rotating airport carousel, my smartphone screen continuously flashed with endless incoming notifications from my desperate relatives. The vibrating device relentlessly displayed an overwhelming barrage of frantic missed calls originating simultaneously from both Mom and Rhonda. They desperately attempted to reach me to secure the required emergency funding while their carefully constructed social empire collapsed spectacularly around them. I calmly watched the glowing digital counter steadily increase until the final tally of missed calls stopped exactly at the number 59. I simply smiled while sliding the silenced phone back into my pocket because the chaotic situation unfolding across the ocean was no longer my problem to solve. We walked directly toward the bright tropical sunshine waiting outside the terminal to finally begin our peaceful vacation away from their endless toxic drama. At exactly 3 o'clock in the afternoon on that same day, I finally decided to press the green answer button when the digital screen illuminated with an incoming call from Mom for the 20th consecutive time. The immediate audio transmitting through the tiny electronic speaker consisted entirely of absolute chaos, perfectly mixed with severe emotional desperation. Mom was hysterically sobbing into the receiver while aggressively demanding that I instantly fix the catastrophic situation occurring inside the Seattle venue. "You absolutely must transfer the emergency funds immediately because the important guests are already waiting in the main lobby," Mom screamed desperately through the phone. In the highly chaotic background behind her frantic weeping voice, I could distinctly hear Rhonda screaming loudly about her completely ruined reputation being shattered beyond repair. She was violently blaming my sudden disappearance for destroying her heavily manufactured high society image in front of Blake, alongside his incredibly judgmental wealthy parents. She hysterically shrieked that the ruthless hotel management had officially started dismantling the expensive floral arrangements because nobody could provide the mandatory cash payments required to proceed. Instead of matching their rapidly escalating aggressive energy or engaging in a completely pointless shouting match regarding the canceled credit cards, I maintained a perfectly icy vocal tone. I calmly retrieved the digital copy of the demanding email saved on my tablet device to read her exact vicious words directly into the phone receiver. Willow ruins the sophisticated atmosphere of the ceremony. I recited the specific cruel sentence with absolute chilling precision while maintaining perfect control over my breathing. I deliberately allowed those sickening words to hang heavily over the international digital connection before delivering my final psychological strike against her persistent toxic manipulation. I wanted her to deeply understand the exact unforgivable boundary they had foolishly crossed regarding the basic dignity of my innocent child. They genuinely believed they could ruthlessly insult a young girl without facing any severe repercussions simply because they shared the same biological bloodline. Mom, do you genuinely want me to tell my own daughter to blindly accept that horrific statement? I asked directly without showing any emotional weakness whatsoever. The chaotic screaming echoing through the background suddenly ceased as a profoundly deafening silence completely overtook the international phone connection for several long, agonizing seconds. Mom remained absolutely speechless because she possessed absolutely zero logical excuses to adequately defend the undeniable cruelty explicitly directed at her own innocent granddaughter. She finally realized that weaponizing traditional family loyalty could never successfully force a fiercely protective mother to actively tolerate the blatant public degradation of her own flesh and blood. The incredibly heavy silence proved definitively that she fully recognized their abusive behavior was entirely indefensible under any imaginable circumstances within a civilized society. She could not utter a single coherent syllable to justify the blatant disrespect they had continuously demonstrated over the past several months during the elaborate wedding preparations. I did not patiently wait for any pathetic fabricated apologies or listen to any further desperate attempts at financial extortion from the silent woman remaining on the line. I firmly declared that my lifelong obligations toward fixing their endless monetary mistakes were permanently finished starting from this exact second, without any possibility of future negotiation. I pressed the red disconnect button to completely terminate the active call before immediately navigating toward the communication security settings on my mobile device. I systematically added every single phone number associated with my toxic relatives into the permanent block list to ensure they could never reach me or my daughter ever again. Removing their persistent digital presence from my daily existence felt incredibly liberating after enduring decades of their relentless emotional manipulation alongside their constant financial abuse. I simply placed the silenced smartphone onto the glass table beside me while turning my attention fully back toward enjoying the peaceful vacation alongside my beloved daughter. Exactly 1 week after that disastrous event finally concluded, Oscar securely transmitted a highly detailed report regarding the severe legal consequences that occurred in Seattle. According to the verified information carefully gathered by my professional representative, Blake remarkably maintained his outward composure without causing any massive public scenes inside the crowded hotel lobby. However, he quietly packed all his personal belongings to permanently leave their shared luxury apartment merely a few days following the catastrophic reception failure. He subsequently hired a professional family attorney to officially terminate their formal engagement while completely distancing his respectable parents from the humiliating financial scandal. He rightfully refused to legally bind his future to a deceitful partner who blatantly lied about her monetary status while secretly relying on her heavily despised sibling for basic survival. Blake thoroughly understood that officially marrying a manipulative individual capable of such profound deception would ultimately destroy his own carefully structured professional life. Consequently, Rhonda was violently forced to independently confront the terrifying reality of those massive penalty invoices resulting directly from her multiple severe contract violations. The uncompromising hotel management rapidly pursued aggressive legal actions to completely recover the substantial financial damages caused by the sudden last-minute cancellation of their expensive premium services. Without my extensive credit limits reliably functioning as her permanent protective safety net, she was instantly pushed into an inescapable pit of suffocating consumer debt. Mom was completely unable to financially rescue her favored daughter because she had similarly exhausted her own limited resources trying to maintain their elaborate facade of wealthy superiority. Their entire fabricated social empire completely crumbled into dust the exact moment I finally refused to continuously supply the necessary monetary foundation. Reflecting deeply upon the devastating emotional wreckage left behind, I realized with absolute clarity that I never actually betrayed my biological relatives under any objective circumstances. They had maliciously betrayed my unwavering lifelong devotion time and time again before successfully forcing me to utilize this incredibly ruthless method merely for necessary self-defense. They deliberately chose to prioritize their shallow, fabricated social image over the fundamental emotional well-being of my completely innocent child. Walking away from their endless toxic manipulation was the absolutely only logical choice remaining after they repeatedly demonstrated their complete inability to offer genuine respect or basic human decency toward my small family. I am incredibly proud of my difficult decision because it finally allowed Willow and me to peacefully begin a brand new chapter completely free from their suffocating emotional abuse. Looking comprehensively at the entire situation, there are certain harsh truths that we must eventually accept in order to truly grow as independent individuals. Sharing a biological bloodline is never a valid contractual agreement, allowing abusive relatives to unconditionally trample over your personal boundaries. When you continuously offer massive sacrifices but only receive bitter contempt in return, choosing to walk away is never an act of selfishness, but rather a highly justifiable execution of personal self-defense. Your inherent human value is not determined by the conditional validation provided by your family members, especially when dealing with a toxic dynamic that constantly takes your genuine kindness for granted. Sometimes the absolute best punishment for deeply ungrateful people is simply forcing them to effectively carry their own heavy burdens without relying on your constant support. Thank you so much for spending your valuable time listening to my personal story until the very last minute. What do you honestly think about my final retaliatory decision regarding this incredibly complicated family situation? If you were trapped in that identical circumstance, would you decisively take everything back exactly like I did? Please leave your thoughts in the comments below, because I sincerely look forward to reading everyone's unique perspectives.